There comes a moment in a man's life when he realizes that words, simple, sincere words, carry more power than wealth, status, or charm ever could. A moment when he understands that the right sentence, spoken with honesty, can reach deeper into a woman's heart than years of empty gestures. And yet, most men never learn this. They speak, but they don't connect. They compliment, but they don't touch the soul. And today, I want to take you somewhere deeper, into the kind of words that don't just impress a woman, but stay with her long after you've walked away. Because as men grow older, wiser, and more grounded, their words begin to carry a different weight. Not because they try harder, but because they finally understand. They've seen enough life to know that beauty fades, attention is cheap, but emotional truth that is rare. And women, especially mature, emotionally aware women, are not looking for flattery. They are looking for something real. Something that feels safe, something that feels seen. I remember a man once told me, he said, when I was younger, I thought women wanted to hear how beautiful they were. Now I realize they want to feel understood. That one sentence carries years of lessons, because a compliment is not just a statement, it is a reflection of what you notice, what you value, and how deeply you see the person in front of you. And the first compliment that truly reaches a woman's heart is not about her appearance at all. It is when a man looks at her, not just with his eyes, but with his awareness, and says something that tells her, I see who you are beyond what the world notices. There is something powerful in telling a woman that you admire her strength, not in a loud, exaggerated way, but in a calm, grounded tone. Because strength is something most women carry quietly. They go through struggles, carry emotional burdens, handle responsibilities, and still show up with grace. And rarely does anyone stop to acknowledge that. When an older man says, I admire how strong you are, not everyone could carry what you carry. It doesn't feel like a line. It feels like recognition, and recognition is one of the deepest human needs, because in that moment, she doesn't feel like she has to prove herself. She doesn't feel like she has to perform. She feels seen, and more importantly, she feels respected. And respect is where everything begins. You see, younger men often rush to impress. They throw compliments like confetti, hoping something sticks. But older men, men who have lived, who have loved, who have lost, understand that silence, observation, and timing matter more than quantity. They don't speak just to fill space. They speak when they have something meaningful to say, and that's what makes their words land differently. There's another compliment that holds quiet power. It's when a man tells a woman that he feels calm around her. Not excited in a chaotic, restless way, but calm, safe, grounded. Think about that for a moment. In a world full of noise, pressure, and constant stimulation, calm is rare. And when a woman hears a man say, there's something about you that brings me peace, it touches something deep within her, because it tells her that her presence, not just her appearance, not just her personality, but her energy has value. And energy is something people feel before they understand it. Many women spend their lives being told they need to be more beautiful, more successful, more exciting. But very few are told that who they already are is enough to create peace in someone else's life. And when that realization hits, it changes something inside her. It softens her guard, it opens her heart, and suddenly, she is no longer interacting with a man who is trying to impress her. She is connecting with a man who truly feels her presence. That is the difference. And then comes something even deeper. A compliment that many men overlook because it requires vulnerability. It requires honesty. It requires the courage to speak from the heart instead of from the ego. It's when a man tells a woman, I respect the way you think, not you're smart, in a casual, dismissive way, but a genuine acknowledgement of her mind, her perspective, her way of seeing the world, because intelligence for many women is not about showing off knowledge. It's about how they process life, how they understand people, how they navigate emotions, challenges, and decisions. When a man recognizes that, he is no longer just seeing her, he is valuing her, and value is what creates connection. I once met a woman who said something that stayed with me. She said, "The moment I feel like a man truly respects my mind, I start listening to his heart. Think about the depth of that." Because when respect enters the space, everything changes. Conversations become meaningful, silences become comfortable, and the connection begins to grow not from attraction alone, but from understanding. And understanding is what lasts. Now, here's where most men get it wrong. They believe compliments are about making a woman feel good in the moment. But the truth is, the right compliment doesn't just make her feel good, it makes her feel remembered. Long after the conversation ends, long after the meeting is over, she remembers how you made her feel about herself. And that is where emotional impact lives. Older men understand this, often not because they were taught, but because life taught them. They've experienced relationships where words were empty, they've seen connections fade because depth was missing, and over time, they begin to choose their words more carefully, more intentionally, because they know that one sincere sentence can do what 1,000 empty compliments never will. And as we go deeper into this journey, you'll begin to see that the compliments women truly love are not the ones that sound impressive, but the ones that feel honest. They are simple, they are real, and they come from a place of awareness. Because at the end of the day, it's not about saying the perfect thing. It's about saying the true thing at the right moment with the right intention. And that is what separates boys from men. That is what separates noise from meaning, and that is where real connection begins. There's a quiet shift that happens when a man stops trying to be heard and starts trying to understand. It's subtle, almost invisible from the outside, but inside, it changes everything, because now his words are no longer coming from a place of need, they are coming from a place of awareness. And this is where the next compliment begins to reveal its power. It's when a man looks at a woman, listens to her, not just her words, but her pauses, her tone, the emotion she doesn't fully express, and then gently says, "I appreciate how genuine you are." Now, to some, this may sound simple, almost ordinary, but to a woman who has spent years navigating a world where people wear masks, where intentions are often hidden, where authenticity is rare, this lands differently. Because being genuine is not easy. It means choosing honesty over approval. It means showing your true self even when it's uncomfortable. It means risking misunderstanding just to remain real. And many women do this quietly, without recognition, without applause. So when an older man notices that, when he says it with calm certainty, it doesn't feel like a compliment, it feels like validation. And validation, when it comes from a place of truth, has the power to heal parts of a person that have been ignored for years. I once heard a man say, "People don't fall for perfection, they fall for authenticity they can trust." And that trust begins with recognizing what is real in someone. You see, women don't just listen to what you say, they feel where it's coming from. If it comes from surface level observation, it fades quickly. But if it comes from a place of presence, of truly seeing her, it stays. And this brings us to something even more profound. There is a certain kind of compliment that doesn't just make a woman feel seen. It makes her feel safe to be herself. And that is when a man acknowledges her emotional depth without trying to fix it, change it, or control it. When he says, "I admire how deeply you feel things, it's rare, and it's beautiful." Now understand this. Many women have been made to feel that their emotions are too much, too intense, too complicated, too overwhelming. They've been told to calm down, to be less sensitive, to not think so deeply. So over time, they learn to hide parts of themselves. They soften their reactions. They silence their thoughts. They begin to believe that to be accepted, they must be less. But when a man, especially one who carries maturity and emotional awareness, comes into her life and appreciates that depth instead of fearing it, something inside her begins to open again. Because now she doesn't feel like she has to shrink. She feels like she can expand, and that expansion is where connection truly begins. There's something deeply powerful about being accepted, not despite who you are, but because of it. And older men, the ones who have taken time to understand themselves, often reach a point where they no longer fear emotional depth. They welcome it, they respect it, they recognize it as a sign of someone who has lived, who has felt, who has experienced life beyond the surface. And when they express that recognition, it carries weight, not because of the words themselves, but because of the life experience behind them. Now, let's go even deeper. There is a compliment that speaks directly to a woman's sense of worth, not in a loud or dramatic way, but in a quiet, steady presence. It's when a man says, "I value the way you carry yourself." Notice the difference here. He's not talking about her looks. He's not talking about her achievements. He's talking about her presence, her energy, the way she moves through the world. Because how a woman carries herself tells a story. It reflects her self-respect, her confidence, her boundaries, her experiences. It shows how she has chosen to respond to life. And when a man notices that, when he acknowledges it without exaggeration or performance, it tells her something important, that she doesn't have to prove her worth, it is already visible. And that kind of reassurance is rare. In a world where people are constantly trying to be more, do more, achieve more, being valued for simply being who you are is deeply comforting. And this is what older men begin to understand. They stop chasing surface-level attraction, and they start appreciating substance. They stop reacting to appearances, and they start responding to presence. They begin to realize that real connection is not built on excitement alone, but on respect, understanding, and emotional safety. And all of that begins with words, but not just any words, words that are chosen with care, words that are spoken with intention, words that reflect not just what you see, but what you understand. Because at the end of the day, the compliments that women truly love are not the ones that make them feel admired for a moment, but the ones that make them feel understood for a lifetime. And when a man reaches that level of awareness, he no longer needs to impress. His presence speaks, his words resonate, and his impact lasts. There comes a stage in life where a man no longer speaks to be liked, he speaks to be true. And in that truth, something powerful begins to happen. His words stop chasing attention and start creating connection. Because now he understands something most people miss, that the deepest compliments are not about what is obvious, but about what is often overlooked. And this is where another beautiful layer unfolds. It's when a man looks at a woman not during her best moments, not when she's dressed perfectly or speaking confidently, but in her ordinary, unguarded state, and softly says, "I feel comfortable being myself around you." Now think about that carefully. In a world where everyone is trying to impress, trying to perform, trying to present a polished version of themselves, comfort is rare. True comfort, where you don't feel judged, where you don't feel the need to act, is something people spend years searching for. And when a woman hears this from a man who carries calm, grounded energy, it touches her in a way that's hard to explain. Because it tells her that her presence is not just attractive, it is accepting. It tells her that she creates a space where someone else can breathe, relax, and simply be. And that realization has a quiet kind of power. Because when a woman knows she brings comfort into someone's life, she begins to associate herself with peace, not pressure. And peace is something people don't walk away from easily. You see, older men often reach a point where they stop seeking constant excitement. They've lived through enough highs and lows to realize that excitement fades but peace sustains. So when they recognize that quality in a woman, they don't overlook it. They honor it, and that honor, expressed through simple, sincere words, creates a bond that doesn't rely on intensity but on stability. And stability is what allows something real to grow. Now, let's move into something even more meaningful. There is a compliment that speaks directly to a woman's impact, not just on a man, but on the world around her. It's when a man says, "You make people feel good about themselves." This is deeper than it first appears. Because it's not about what she has, it's not about what she looks like, it's about what she gives. Her energy, her kindness, her ability to uplift others without even trying. Many women go through life offering this naturally. They listen, they support, they encourage. They create spaces where others feel valued, often without receiving the same in return. And over time, that can become exhausting, because giving without being seen slowly drains the spirit. But when a man notices this, when he reflects it back to her, it does something powerful. It reminds her that her presence matters, that the way she treats others has impact, that her kindness is not invisible, and in that moment, she doesn't just feel appreciated, she feels meaningful. And meaning is one of the deepest emotional needs a human being can have. Now, here is where the wisdom of experience truly shines. Older men begin to understand that attraction is not built only on chemistry. It is built on emotional resonance, on how someone makes you feel about yourself, on the space they create when you're around them. And when they find a woman who naturally brings positivity, warmth, and emotional ease into their life, they don't take it for granted. They acknowledge it, they speak it, because they know that what is not appreciated eventually fades away. And appreciation is not something you assume, it is something you express. And then there is one more layer, a deeply human, deeply grounding compliment that carries quiet strength. It's when a man looks at a woman and says, "I trust your judgment." Now this is powerful in a way that goes beyond emotion. Because trust is not given lightly, especially by someone who has experienced life, who has made mistakes, who has learned the hard way that not everyone sees clearly. So when an older man expresses trust, not blindly, not carelessly, but intentionally, it reflects a deep level of respect. It tells her that he values her perspective, that he believes in her ability to think, to decide, to navigate life with awareness. And for many women, this is incredibly affirming, because too often they are second, guessed, overlooked, not taken seriously in spaces where their voice matters. But when a man says, "I trust your judgment," he is not just complimenting her, he is empowering her. He is giving her space to stand in her intelligence, her intuition, her life experience. And that kind of respect creates a connection that is rooted in equality, not control. And this is what separates a meaningful connection from a superficial one, because when respect, appreciation, comfort, and trust all come together, something real begins to form. Not rushed, not forced, but naturally and deeply. And at this stage, a man no longer wonders what to say, because his words are no longer strategies. They are reflections of what he genuinely sees and feels. And that authenticity is what makes them unforgettable. And as life continues to shape a man, through lessons, through losses, through moments that humble him, he begins to understand something even deeper, that the most meaningful words are not the ones that impress in the moment, but the ones that stay in the heart long after the moment has passed. Because at this stage, he is no longer speaking to create attraction, he is speaking to create truth. And truth has a different kind of power. It doesn't rush, it doesn't force, it simply lands and remains. There is one final compliment, quiet, sincere, and deeply grounding, that completes this journey. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it carries a weight that very few words can match. It's when a man looks at a woman with calm certainty and says, "I'm glad you're in my life." Now pause for a moment and feel that. No exaggeration, no performance, no hidden agenda, just a simple acknowledgement of presence, and yet it means everything. Because in a world where people come and go, where connections are often temporary, where attention is given and taken away so easily, being told that your presence matters, that your existence in someone's life is appreciated, touches something deep within the human heart. It tells her that she is not just passing through someone's life unnoticed. She is valued, she is remembered, she is wanted not for what she does, but for who she is, and that kind of emotional security is rare. You see, older men often reach a place where they stop complicating things. They've lived enough to realize that the simplest truths are often the most powerful ones. They don't feel the need to impress with grand gestures or perfect words. They understand that sincerity spoken at the right time is enough. And when they say something like, "I'm glad you're in my life," it carries the weight of everything they've experienced. It carries honesty, it carries presence, it carries intention, and most importantly, it carries peace. Because these words don't create pressure, they don't demand anything in return, they simply offer appreciation. And appreciation, when it is real, creates a quiet bond that doesn't need constant reassurance, it just exists. And this is where everything we've spoken about begins to come together. The admiration of her strength, the appreciation of her authenticity, the respect for her mind, the recognition of her emotional depth, the value of her presence, the comfort she brings, the impact she has on others, the trust in her judgment, and finally, the simple, honest gratitude for her being in your life. These are not just compliments. They are reflections of awareness. They are expressions of a man who has taken the time to understand not just women, but himself. Because, in the end, the way a man speaks to a woman reveals the relationship he has with his own depth. If he is shallow within, his words will be shallow. If he is grounded, aware, and emotionally present, his words will carry meaning. And meaning is what creates lasting connection. Now here's the truth that many people don't talk about. It's not about memorizing the right things to say. It's not about using these words as techniques or strategies. Because the moment words are used without sincerity, they lose their power. Women can feel the difference. They always can. What matters is becoming the kind of man who naturally sees these things, who naturally feels these things, who naturally expresses them without effort, without calculation. Because when the words come from a real place, they don't just sound different. They feel different, and that feeling is what stays, long after the conversation ends, long after the moment passes. It stays in the way she remembers you, in the way she thinks about you, in the way she feels when your name comes to mind. Because at the end of the day, people may forget what you said, but they never forget how you made them feel. And a man who understands this doesn't chase attention. He creates impact quietly, naturally, and deeply. And so, as we come to the end of this journey, there is one truth that stands quietly above all the rest. It is not the words themselves that change everything. It is the intention behind them. Because a compliment, when spoken without presence, is just sound. But when it comes from a place of understanding, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes a bridge between two people, a bridge between surface and depth, a bridge between being seen and being truly known. You see, life has a way of humbling us. It teaches us, sometimes gently, sometimes painfully, that connection is not built on perfection. It is built on honesty, on awareness, on those small, meaningful moments where we choose to speak from the heart instead of from the ego. And the men who learn this, the men who take the time to understand the emotional world of a woman, they don't just become more attractive. They become more human, because at the core of it all, every woman, no matter her age, her past, her strength, wants to feel something simple yet profound. She wants to feel seen, not for how she looks, but for who she is. She wants to feel valued, not for what she does, but for what she brings into someone's life. She wants to feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally. Safe to be herself, safe to express, safe to exist without fear of being judged or misunderstood. And the right words, spoken at the right time with the right heart, can create that space. But here is where the real lesson begins. Don't walk away from this thinking you've learned a list of compliments. Walk away understanding that you've been given a mirror. A mirror that asks you to look within yourself, to grow, to become more aware, to slow down enough to truly see the person in front of you. Because when you become that man, the man who listens deeply, who observes quietly, who speaks sincerely, you will never have to wonder what to say. The right words will come to you naturally, effortlessly, and more importantly, truthfully, and when that happens, something beautiful unfolds. You stop chasing connection, and connection begins to find you, because people are not drawn to perfect words. They are drawn to real ones. They are drawn to presence. They are drawn to the feeling of being understood in a world that often moves too fast to notice. So the next time you speak to a woman, don't rush, don't perform, don't try to impress, just be present. See her, feel the moment, and speak what is real, because in the end, it's not about saying more, it's about saying what matters. And when you do that, you won't just be heard, you will be remembered.